Okay, in the meantime, I guess since my part, which is the introduction, is not related 100% to coding, I can start and we will have most likely people joining in the meantime. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. My name is Valentina Müller and I am the project manager at the Academy. Can you please, Lucas, go to the next slide? I just wanted to just give you a brief introduction to us, to why we are here, obviously. So we are an coding bootcamp, fully online, fully remote. We are currently running 2 courses, one on front-end development and the other one on back-end development. And well, you're here obviously to understand if the world of backend development is for you, right? With this introduction lesson, but we will soon be launching 2 long courses, so full courses of 24 weeks, so 6 months on March, to which obviously you are fully invited to attend if you decide that you want to change your career path and enter the world of IT, of coding. Why you should do it with us if you decide this is for you is because we welcome you to a community. So we are not doing on-demand coding courses, no. You are doing everyday exercise and you are doing a lot of teamwork and you are really learning how to use the tool on a very hands-on approach. And that's what sets us apart, the Jagaad Academy. Can you go next, please, darling? Why we're also different, because the Jagaad Academy is supported by the Jagaad Digital Company. So we are a software house. Our coaches are basically doing coding every day. So they are working as coders and they are also members and coaches at the Academy. So you would be learning real life problems that companies today have. And this is what we're doing as a digital company. So we have more than 50 developers all around the world. We have more than 20 ongoing clients. We are all doing remote work. So we are all a team of international people from all the corners of the world. And this is very fun for you because if you study with us, then you will get access to work opportunities through us, through the Jagaad company, or through one of our partner companies that we always support each other within our network, because we are a community, as I was telling you before. And next slide, please. Thank you. So why we launched this academy? Because there is a huge IT talent skill gap in the world. So the demand for developers is bigger, way bigger than the offer. So it's very difficult to find software developers, high quality software developers. And so we, as a digital company, we were having a problem. We didn't have the capacity to hire junior developers. So we said, okay, let's launch an academy and let's teach people how to become good software developers so we can hire them or we can connect them to one of our partner companies, as I was telling you before. Please go to the next slide. And as I was telling you, we are doing courses that are completely different from the rest of the market because we produce our own content. As I said, our coaches are doing code every day. So the classes and the exercise you do will be very up to date, the problems that the industry is facing today. We're 100% remote. You will not only learn about tools and about coding, but you will learn high-level thinking. You will learn problem solving. You will learn how to collaborate in teams, how to work with a project manager. So all of these things are not covered today on the coding bootcamps that are on demand mainly. That's why we offer live lessons. So we can really ensure that our graduates know how to code. And by the way, our format is study now, pay later. So you enter our academy, you start learning with us for 6 months, and you start paying for the course only after graduating. But this is to be spoken on another, you can reach back to me for these details if you need. Can you go to the next slide, please? We are, as I said, running 2 courses right now. So Lucas is the coach for the PHP, but we are also running, and you will meet him in 2 seconds, but we are also running a course on front end, and we will 2 more courses will be opening on March. So the invitation is also, if you think this is for you, to get in contact with us, because we could have places for you in the upcoming courses in March. Next slide, please. And this is just to leave the floor to Lucas. Lucas is our PHP backend developer, software developer at Jagaad, and the PHP backend coach. He's based in Brazil, and he will be giving the lesson today to all of you. But at the end of the presentation, you will find my email in case you have any doubts related to the upcoming courses or to anything else after this introduction to the world of PHP. So thank you so much. Lucas, darling, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Valentina, and welcome to our open lesson. My name is Lucas. I'm a PHP developer. I've been working as a PHP developer or a software developer since 2013, so almost I have been working as a software developer for almost 10 years. During my career, I have worked with many different frameworks, also with pure PHP. In 2015, I got the Zen PHP certification, so I learned a little bit more about the internals of PHP. So nowadays, I say that my expertise is PHP, although I can also go in other areas inside the software development area. So we can go. I've already worked with front end, also infrastructure, and so on. Okay, and I'm from Brazil. Currently, I'm working as a PHP developer and coach at Jagaad. All right, and today we are going to have this open lesson. So we are going to have an introduction to PHP. I want to show you a few things to start coding in PHP. Of course, if you have some background if you have already seen something related to programming, basic algorithms kind of thing, it's going to be even better and easier for you to follow me. And I suggest you to follow me, not now, but we are going to put this lesson recording. We are going to publish it, the recording, so you can watch later and try to follow. Now I will ask you to just pay attention to what I'm going to do. So you can remember also what I mentioned, what I told, and then later you can try to follow by yourself. But if you want to install and follow by yourself now, it's up to you. Okay, so we are going to learn specifically, we're going to see specifically about PHP. I will start talking about the language itself, the industry. I've brought some data for us to analyze and to understand more about the language. And yeah, that's basically what we're going to see. And I want to know from yourself as well, if you have some background. Is everyone able to send message on the chat, by the way? Do you have experience with coding, basics, nothing? What is your background in PHP or coding in general? Can you tell me? And it will be even better for me to move forward faster or slower. So please, it will be very helpful if you manage to communicate with me via the chat. Okay? By the way, it's possible to send the message. Someone can send something.
Yes, sure. Right now, I allowed to everyone to send messages to everyone. But guys, okay. Please, if you have any questions, there is a reaction to lower your hand. And after that, I will give you possibility to turn your mic on, and you will have the possibility to talk directly with the coach.
Okay, so let's start. I will start talking about the backend development. Okay, so there are people from the front end currently. So now you're going to see the backend, how what we do in the backend. So that's cool. Some people learning about PHP. Okay. Okay, so just share your experience. So it's going to be even better for me to also continue even leverage this experience more. And I can answer some of your questions. As I mentioned, I can move faster or slower as you send some messages. Okay, about PHP and Python. So the question, more specific question like this, I will answer at the end, but you can just get these questions. Okay, thank you everyone for sending the messages in the chat. So now I can see everyone can send, and we can continue this communication. Okay, so let's start talking about the backend development. So when we talk about PHP, we are talking about specifically about backend development. That is basically when we have a web application, it's everything that you can't see in a website. So for example, when you go to an e-commerce or to a shopping and you have the interface, the website that you interact with, the buttons, you have the images and everything else you see in the browser, all these things is what we call the front end components or the front end itself, the UI, the user interface. Okay, but for example, when you go to the checkout, you buy the product you want and you send this for processing. The processing itself to send some message, to notify the user about the delivery status and so on, the payment process, and all this process, this processing part, they are executed in the server side. It's the part of the application or the software that we don't see. That part, that area of the software is what you call backend development. So the responsibility to develop this part of the software is of the backend developer. Okay, so nowadays these roles, they are separated. In the past, we had some roles called webmaster, that the person was responsible to do everything. It was very popular to use PHP for everything. Nowadays, these roles, they are more separated because of the sophistication of the UI. So we have more animations and more complex UIs, like, for example, single-page applications. If you have already studied about front end, they are more complex to develop. So there are people who are more focused and they are expert in the front end part, and people who are expert in the back end part. So it's possible to separate these roles nowadays. Although it's possible also to become a full stack developer as we study more, but it takes time, especially if you want to be very good in both. So you need to study a lot, and it's not a short path, okay, or journey. Okay, some people already learned about SQL. Okay, and here in the description, as we can see, the backend developers ensure the website performs correctly, focus on database, backend logic, application programming interface, architecture, and servers. So as I mentioned, these are the areas that is a responsibility of the backend developer. Nowadays, it's very common to see the companies and people talking about APIs. So this term here, because when you develop an API, you can you allow different interfaces to interact with your server side, okay, with your application. We're going to see a little bit more about it. I'll try to give you a little bit more information about how the backend, the server side, and you are going to understand more how the separation happens, okay? Of course, it's not possible to go into details if you want to learn the detail. In our full course, we go into the details, you learn about HTTP, but here I will just show you the overview, okay? About the industry. So I brought this information here. Yeah, people who are beginners, it's also, okay, this open lesson here, I created this lesson specifically for beginners, and for you to have this first contact with PHP, okay? So this is the idea. So don't need to worry if you are a beginner. So about the industry, I brought this information, interesting information, that PHP is the 5th top most demanded programming language in 2022. When we compare here with all the programming languages, okay? So this is basically a research from this Dev Job Scanner that they analyzed more than 12 million developer jobs, okay? And they got only those who had explicitly required a programming language. So compared to all the programming languages, PHP is the number 5. And this is very good because PHP is specifically for server-side web applications. When we talk, for example, about Python or about Java, these languages, they can also go in other devices, not only the web. So you can have Java, for example, in some in a television, in a TV, for example. So in this kind of different devices, you also have the smartphone, which you can write application in Java. And Python also can go in some embedded hardwares and so on. So PHP to be too high in this level, it's because we have a lot of opportunities in the web development area. So PHP is mostly used and was created specifically to solve the problem of the web, to create websites and be like in the top rank when we talk about job offers. It's a very good position because PHP doesn't go still. People don't use PHP to write some software to embedded devices, like, for example, the television I mentioned, or smartwatch or smartphones. So people don't use PHP for it. PHP is mostly in the server side, in the APIs. And even though it's only in this specific area, it's top 5 here. Okay, so meaning that 1 out of 10 dev jobs require PHP. So in this research, for example, they found 226K. Okay, so it's a lot of opportunities. And if we take a look at the Glassdoor, we also can check the salary. So this is the average, for example, if we look at the US location. So the yearly salary from a PHP developer. So you can take a look for your location or from a specific location you want to check, but this is from the US that I took a look. Okay, so this is for all experience. And when we go to 0 to 1 year, we also have this yearly salary. Okay, so we can take a look at the Glassdoor. The link is in the source. I will share this presentation with you. It actually is already in the platform where you join this live. So if you just refresh the page there, you should be able to see the link to this presentation, and you are gonna also have access to the link. All right. So let's start talking about PHP. So what is PHP? So as I mentioned, PHP is specifically for web. Nowadays, we call PHP, the acronym for PHP is Hypertext Processor. It is widely used open source general purpose scripting language that is especially suited for web development and can be embedded into HTML. So this was the reason why PHP was created, to create websites. That's why it's so popular in the web. So last time I took a look, it was like almost 7% of the Okay, so as I was mentioned, PHP is the most used programming language when we talk about server-side scripting language, and it's one of the easiest to learn nowadays compared to Python. Is also Python is also easy to learn, but PHP, when we talk about web development, it's even easier in my opinion. No bias, okay. And this is the PHP mascot. So if you don't know, this is the PHP elephant. So with PH, okay. So this is the thing that the other programming language don't have. So PHP is better also because of this. Okay. Okay, so let's go over a little bit of the history before I start coding. So PHP was created in 1994 by Rasmus Lerdorf. It was, at that time, they gave the name of personal homepage because the idea of Rasmus was to create to publish his own resume. So he just created this something with C language to publish his resume in the web. And because of this, he started to create something better, like a level of abstraction using C to make it easier for other people also who want to create something for the web to use that. And because of that, he started creating the language. And at the beginning, as I mentioned, he called personal homepage tools. That's why we have the PHP. But nowadays it has a different meaning. It means hypertext preprocessor. Okay, currently PHP is on version 8.2, which was released 8 December, so yeah, 2 weeks ago. And there are a lot of new features, very cool features. Nowadays, you have the options, for example, if you are using PHP to don't use types or to use types, or you have a very rich type system. If you want to use, you have the option to enable a more strict type or not. So you have the best of both worlds. The thing that is going to make you move fast, and also the features that is going to make you create a better code, a safer software product or code. Okay, so the PHP community and the internal developers, they are creating very cool features, and it's evolving also a lot PHP. And as we can see, it's actively maintained. So the newest version, it's very recently. Okay, and as I mentioned, when we check the statistics for only server-side programming languages, because here we are not talking about programming language that goes embedded in your hardware, for example, in the smartwatch, television, cars, and so on. So when we just remove that, and we just compare web programming language that runs in the server side, PHP is by far the first one. Okay, 77% of the applications of the website, they are using PHP. Okay, so this is the real comparison with PHP, especially nowadays, that PHP is mostly used for web development. All right. So now for you to understand a little bit better, I will close this. And I will show you, here is an explanation of how what is a server-side application. So as I mentioned, PHP runs in the server. Okay. So we have the front end and the back end. And we can see, for example, here in this diagram, where the PHP is exactly located. Okay. So for example, we have a browser. So for a web application, a common web application as I'm using here right now, we have a browser which communicates with the server, and the server is where the PHP is located. Okay. So in the browser is what I see. So for example, I'm using here Google Slides. So this is in the browser here, I have HTML, I have CSS, I have JavaScript. But when I save something here in the browser, a request is sent to the server, because Google needs to save it in the Google database, in the Google server. And to do that, a request is sent to the server. Okay, so for example, when I save it here in the Google Slides, the Google Slides will send this to a server. For example, let's suppose if Google was using PHP, the PHP would process the request and save that to the database. Okay, so I don't have access to this area of the software. So here is what we call the front end, so what the user sees, and here is what we call the server side. Okay, so the server side, and is where the PHP runs. Okay, so we have the separation, and for example, in our PHP full course, we focus on the development of the PHP, the server side application, APIs, and so on. Although we learn a few, just the basics of HTML, because it's also important to learn this kind of thing. Okay, so this is how PHP works. And here is where the PHP developer deploy the applications. Okay. Any questions so far, please? You can ask. Is it clear so far? Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you know these informations? Everything new for you? What is
Yes, for now, guys are telling that everything's clear. I'm receiving it in direct messages. But anyway, guys, please collect your questions and arrive on QA session where Lucas will be able to answer on all your questions.
Okay, all right. Okay, so here is the PHP. So the PHP is going to be in the server side. And that's where we are going to focus. So in this open course, I will show you how to start coding in PHP. It's more specifically, okay? So if you were in the front end course before, in the lesson before, this is going to be even more interesting for you, because if you know a little bit of HTML, CSS, even JavaScript, you are going to be able to create some PHP applications, dynamic web applications, and publish that, simple ones, of course, using PHP. All right, let me just put this full screen again. So that's the idea. PHP is going to run in the server side. And we also have some popular use cases, popular companies that are using PHP. So for example, one is Facebook. I think it's one of the most popular that started using PHP. Nowadays, they changed a little bit PHP. It's called nowadays Hackling, but it's still the core is still the same as PHP. Wikipedia, it's PHP famous. The WordPress, as I mentioned, and Trivago, they are also, most of their software is published or is deployed using PHP. Okay, so they have, if you check, they have opportunities for PHP developer. Also Yahoo, and many others. Okay, here's just a few popular companies, because you can see that, yeah, PHP can be deployed for large system, large companies. Okay, because there are some people, especially because of the options we have nowadays, and many new programming languages coming up. Some people say that PHP is not a good option, and so on, because it's old, because it's not safe, and so on. But usually this kind of argument, it's related to very old versions of PHP, like PHP 4, which was like deprecated in 2007, more than 13 years, 14 years. So nowadays PHP is also a robust language and can be easily adopted, even though you have a very huge application. Okay, so let's move forward. I want to show you how to install the PHP. So I have prepared my computer here to share with you how to set up PHP in your computer. If you are using Windows, this is going to be even easier for you. Okay. Because you're gonna just need to follow me. If you are using other operating system, you're gonna need to check this website that I'm gonna show. Okay, so I have prepared my computer here. I have uninstalled some of the tools to reinstall it again. All right, so these are the tools you need to install if you want to start running some PHP code on your computer. This is one way for you to have PHP installed on your computer. Okay, there are other possibilities. This one is a very simple one if you are using Windows, especially. Okay, so you need to go and install in this order here. So I will start installing XAMPP, then I will install Composer, then I will install Git Bash for Windows, and I already have here Visual Code Studio. Okay, but if you don't have, you need to install this as well. XAMPP. What is these tools? Let me open. This tool here is going to provide you the PHP, the executable. Okay, so it's possible to run PHP in the terminal, or it's also possible to have a web server to run PHP, like Apache, like we can see here. Okay, so this is the tool who is going to provide me PHP. If you are using Mac OS or Linux, you also have the option here to download. I'm gonna just go for Windows. So hopefully it works. Let's see. So this is a live coding. So live coding usually have these dangers of having some problems. And the rule is if as more people you have, most likely you are going to have a problem. Okay. So hope these rules don't apply now. Okay, so I'm downloading the XAMPP. I will go one by one. And if it takes too much time, I will go to the other one. Okay, still downloading. I will open also Composer here while it's downloading. Okay, so downloaded. So I'm gonna show you how simple it is. So I'm opening the XAMPP. Hope it works. Let's see. So, okay. So I will uncheck some options. So I will install only the MySQL, the PHP, which is the default. The MySQL is the database. I'm not gonna use and show this for you now, but I will install. And I will also install PHP-MyAdmin. So this is the most common tools that we usually use when we are creating PHP applications. Okay, so I will just go next. I will install in the default folder, so the CXAMPP, and the language is going to be English. Okay, so next, and let this one installing, and I will minimize this and download Composer while it's installing. Okay, so we can go faster. So it's downloading Composer now. This one is running. I wait this one to finish the installation. While it's installing, I will also go to the Git bash and I will download this one as well. So I will download for Windows. My Windows version is 64-bit. So I will download this one because we are going to use the terminal. So I'm going to talk a little bit more. I will talk more about it in the next slides. But we are going to run PHP in the command line. Okay. All right, downloaded. Let's wait this one to finish. If you want to send anything on the chat, please feel free to send message. If I can answer in these intervals, which is while I was installing. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the XAMPP is going to provide the PHP. XAMPP means that it will and this last option, just uncheck that. Okay, so just for you to you don't need to open the XAMPP control panel now because you are going to use PHP in the command line. So finish. So now I have XAMPP installed. If I go to my Windows here and search by XAMPP, I can see it here, but I will not open. Okay, so it's installed because, and just to conclude my previous, what I was mentioned before, the XAMPP means Apache, MariaDB, PHP, and Perl. Okay, so that's why it has this name. You can also find similar tools like MEMP or WAMP or VAMP. That is some ones they are specifically for Windows or for Linux. It depends on the tool that you are using. Okay. So XAMPP is installed. So I already have PHP in my computer. So once you finish this, you have PHP installed. But as I mentioned, I want to have PHP in the command line. Okay. So for example, if you are on Windows, if you go to the PowerShell, you probably have PowerShell. If you type PHP in the PowerShell, PHP-V, for example, you are going, let's see, you are going to have this error because the command it's not found. Okay, but PHP is installed. PHP is here. It's in the C directory. If I go, for example, to my C directory here and xampp, you see that I have PHP installed here, but it cannot find. Okay, so Composer is going to provide us the configuration to automatically add PHP command to the terminal. Okay, so let me open the Composer installation because it's already downloaded. I will install for all user as recommended. This first option you don't need to check, so you are going to have the option to uninstall later if you want. And here is the important part. You see, because I have installed xampp before, Composer has found it. So in this option, Composer is telling me, hey, I found Composer in your computer. Would like to add that to your path, to your window path. And then you can check, you must check this option here to have the Composer command in your terminal. Okay, so this is very important. And that's why it's important also to follow that order. So first install the xampp, then second install the Composer, because Composer will find the PHP executable, and you are going to be able to select this option and have PHP in your terminal. All right, so let's move next. So it's installed. I don't have a proxy. So here it's telling me that it's going to add PHP to the environment variables. Okay, so install and is installed. Okay, next. I don't want to see the documentation, and finished. So if I go and search for the PowerShell again, if you have never used PowerShell and you are not familiar with this black screen, don't worry. But this is not so complex. It's not complex. It's just a way for you to use the computer instead of using this interface here. But you just go using the this black screen, the terminal. Okay. And this is good, especially if you want to be a backend developer to learn, because usually when we need to connect to a server or a remote server, we need to use this kind of tool, because usually the servers, they don't deploy the interface, so you need to connect using the command line. Okay, but you don't need to worry. For now, you just need to follow if later or when you want to run PHP. These steps that I'm doing here. Okay, so now if I try to run PHP, let's see, PHP-V, I have different from the last time, which I had an error. Now I can see the PHP version. You see, because now PHP is installed and configured in my terminal. Okay. You can start using this this tool to run your PHP scripts. It's not a problem, especially if you are already familiar with PowerShell. You can use it. But in our examples here, I'm gonna use Git Bash, okay? Because it already provides Git, and it's the one that I prefer to use because it has some Unix commands. Okay, it's some commands from Linux. So if you also want to be a backend developer, I recommend you to use the Git Bash and be more familiar with the Unix commands and so on. Okay, so we can search more about Unix commands, how to move from one folder to another, create files, and so on. It's cool. Okay, so let me download. I already downloaded, right? Let's see here. Yeah, already downloaded. So let me open the Git executable. So here. Git is gonna be basically the default. I will follow the default configuration. Okay, I will just go next and install it. So there is nothing specific that I'm gonna select. Okay, so just install. And as I mentioned, VS Code is already installed here in my computer. So let me launch Git Bash. So this is gonna open. And now, as you can see, I have Git Bash in my computer. And here, if I type PHP-V, command not found. Let me close and open it again. Sometimes we have these errors. Let's see now. PHP-V. And there we go. So if you don't have the first time, it's just because probably Git bash might not recognize your configurations. And if you just close and open, this will work. Or sometimes because I installed Git bash using the administrator user on Windows, and it has a different configuration. So now I'm using my correct user. I can see the PHP version. So when you have the PHP version here, when it showed for you, it means that PHP is ready for you to use. Okay. So now also because I have Git bash, I can go to some folders and I can open Git bash in a specific folder and start running some PHP script. Okay, that's what we are gonna do from now on. Okay, and as I mentioned, we have some commands here in the terminal that we can type. So for example, if I want to clean the terminal, I just can type clear, and this is gonna clear for me. And we have many other commands. One to switch from one folder to another, and so on, as I mentioned before. So far, I will close here. The last option here is VS Code, but as I mentioned, I already have VS Code installed in my computer. So it's not finding. Let me search by. So VS Code, here we have the download option. So as we can see, we also have VS Code, Visual Code Studio, for different operating system. This is basically the tool that you are going to use to write your code. Okay, it's like a text editor, but a little bit more sophisticated. That is going to highlight some code and it's going to tell you if you have some error and so on. So it's going to support you while you are coding. Okay. All right. So now that I have the tools installed, let's talk a little bit about the command line. So the command line, as I mentioned, is the way that we have to run some PHP scripts without need to run a web server. So although the XAMPP already provide me a web server that is Apache, this one here, if I want to start learning PHP, only PHP basics, I can use the command line because I can create very simple PHP scripts and use the command line to run it. For example, if you want to echo to print something, to use a if else and so on, you can use this, what we call the PHP-CLI. Okay, so that's the way that I'm gonna show you here. Of course, when I start creating the script, if you already have played around with, I saw some people already played around with JavaScript here. You have already created some if-else operation. This is gonna be a lot easier for you. But if you have never played around with this kind of thing, with coding and created script, and you are not familiar with this kind of thing, I highly recommended you, as I mentioned, to watch the recordings and just try to follow the steps that I'm doing here. Because as you see, especially if you are using the same operating system that I'm using here, you're just gonna need to follow the steps and you are gonna be able to run the scripts. And later you can start studying this script step by step, okay? So this is the process, and that's what I'm gonna show you right now. So for you to create your first PHP script, you need to create a PHP file. What is a PHP file? It's a file that contains a .php extension, okay? So the file that you create must have the extension .php. So here we have the example of the Hello World example, is the classical example when we are learning programming language. So here is how we create our Hello World in PHP. So we need to create, for example, a file called hello.php. And inside this file, we are going to add this code. So this is the structure of a PHP code, the syntax. We have the open tag. So in PHP, always you are going to need to open tag. So you're gonna tell to the interpreter, to the PHP command, that here inside this tag, you're gonna add some PHP code. Okay. If we add something outside the tag, this is not gonna be recognized by the PHP interpreter, which is the PHP command I run in the terminal. All right, so this is the open tag, and we can add whatever we want, like any PHP code inside this PHP tag. Okay, so here in the example, I also have the close tag, but the close tag is optional. Okay, so if you have only PHP in the file, you can ignore this one, and it's even recommended if you have only PHP file, only PHP code in the file. And this, to explain you what does it means, echo just means that I want to print something, and I have a space, and next to this command, I tell to PHP what I want to print. In this case, I want to print this string here, this text. Okay, so that's why I have these double quotes. When I have these double quotes, it means it is a text that I want to send to the output. I want to print it in the screen. And the content inside these double quotes is whatever text I want to add. Okay, and one thing that is super important is the semicolon. Okay, so all the PHP instructions, when you finish it, you must add the semicolon at the end. Otherwise, it is going to crash. Okay, before I run this PHP code and show you how it works, and continue to this introduction, I want to also call Summer, who is one of our students at the Academy, to share his experience, a little bit of his experience with you. Yeah, I also want to know where are you from and so on. So we're gonna have Summer is gonna talk a little bit now. Are you with your mic open, Summer? By the way.
Hello. Yes.
Hello, Summer.
My mic is open. How are you, Lucas?
I'm
Hello,
doing
everyone.
great. So yeah.
My name is Samer. I am originally a communication and electronics engineer. I joined the Jagaad Academy like 3 months ago. It was a very good experience for me because I took several online courses before with different platforms, but Jagaad Academy was one of the best experiences I had because what you will learn here in this course is totally different from what you will learn in other platforms, because our main focus here, and especially Lucas, basically focus on how real life experience or real life programming goes on, or how big companies create web apps. So I was interested in this because it was it increased my knowledge. I already had knowledge before in programming, but I don't have real life experience with how it works in real life. When I joined the course, it was like a new thing for me. It was amazing, and I can see it's interesting. Every time we learn new things, we learn theory and we do practice, and he can show you how it goes in real life, how real applications works, how you can move forward into real life experience. Other things I experienced with Jagaad is how much they are understanding. I am already working as a full-time employee, so barely I have time sometimes to focus, but every member in the team. I was saying that it was a great pleasure for me to be part of this academy and to be one of their students. And as I mentioned before, it is every single member in this academy is really supportive, from the coaches to the managers, even to the, let's say, the HR department. They are always communicating with you for anything you have. I think this is one of the best courses I have taken online, and I have a lot of like ambitious to for later on in my career as a developer later. And I would like to say thank you, Lucas, to me for your understanding all the time, especially when I am like late sometimes, but I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much, Summer, for sharing. We are gonna move forward now. Now we are gonna go to the PHP live coding. So now I'm gonna share a few PHP code with you. We understood a little bit how a PHP code works. Before I run it, I need to create a folder and the file for me to add this code and run. Okay, so I will show you a way you can do it without using too much the command line. Okay, because it's possible to just open the git bash and move to the right directory, or I can go to the interface here, and I can, for example, go to my folder, to my personal folder. So here, C, users, Lucas. I can create, for example, the folder here. I will create a folder called Xmas lesson. And inside it, I can create a file, or I can just, for example, show more options. And here on Windows, you're going to see the option to open git bash here. You see? So you can open git bash here. And from now, in this terminal, you're going to be able to run any PHP files in this folder. Okay, so this is a very simple way of open the git bash in the right file. Okay, but I highly recommend, if you want to learn more about it, to learn how to move from one folder to another here in the terminal. For example, if I want to move back to the previous folder, to my personal folder, using the terminal, I can use cd double dots like this. And if I want to go back to the folder, I can use cd Xmas lesson like this. So very simple. But in the beginning, if you have never had contact with this kind of thing, it might look difficult, or it might look those hacker movies when you have black screen and so on, but it's not so complex like that. Okay, so it's quite simple. Now, what I can do here, because I already have installed VS Code in my computer, I can use a command that is called code. This command is going to open the VS Code in the current folder that I am. So currently, I'm here in this folder in my computer. So when I type code and then dot in this case means that I want to open VS Code in the current directory, in the current folder. So this is going to open for me VS Code in this folder here. Okay, if I press enter, it should open for me. Okay, so now I have VS Code opened in that folder, you see? And now I can right click here and create a new file, or I can just click here and create a new file. Okay, so now I will create that file called hello.php. So as I mentioned, the file must have the extension PHP. Otherwise, this is not be recognized by the interpreter. Okay, and I will press enter and the file is created. Okay, so now I can go to my slide, for example. I will clean this and I will copy this code and paste it here. And now I can run this code. Okay, by the way, is it okay for you to see my screen, the code, everything? Is it okay? Can you give me a feedback? Now I think the chat is open for you. Okay, fine. All right, so I'm gonna go to the terminal. And now I will use the command PHP. Before I will clean the terminal, so you can use clear. So I will run this hello.php file. So I need to use the PHP command. So now I have the PHP command because I have just installed it before using xampp and used Composer to set up a PHP command in the terminal for me. And now I need to specify the file. So this is the PHP command, which is going to run the interpreter, who is going to be the command which will interpret the PHP code for me. But I need to specify which file I want to run a PHP code. In this case, hello.php. Because I'm in the same folder as this file here, okay? So if I run, I will see hello world, okay? So now I created the first the PHP code, okay? So this is the very, very basic PHP script we can create. And as I mentioned, if I type, for example, here, ls, this is a Unix command to list all the files you have in the current directory. So if I use this and type enter, I see that in this directory now, I have this file called hello.php. Okay, so I will clean the terminal again, and we can take a little bit more look at this code. So I will delete this break, this close tag. And as I mentioned, because this command is the command which is responsible to print the string in front of it, and the text inside the double quote can be whatever I want, I can change this. So for example, Jagaad Xmas lesson. And I must have the open tag here in the top. So this is going to be my PHP code now. So if I save the file, so I can save here or just Control S, I go to my terminal again, and I can just type PHP hello.php again. And now I have a different output, a different print. Okay. So this is the basic PHP script for you to print something in the screen. And as we see, I'm not using a web server. So because I have configured PHP using that tools we saw before, like xampp, Composer, and Git Bash, I can just go and run it in the terminal. So in this way, it's possible to learn only PHP without adding some HTML or other things using the terminal. Okay, so that's why I did in this way. PHP also have the possibility to use the print command like this. The difference is that print is a function. So we need to use the parentheses like this. But if I run the code now, it's going to have the same result, okay? Nowadays, in PHP is most common for you to find code, people using the echo. They are both basically the same. You will have the same result. But this one is the most common one. The function print also have a return. I'm not gonna enter in the details, but the print function return a result. Okay, return 1 if I'm not wrong. Okay. So okay, this is the print, how I print something. So this is the first PHP script. Let's go ahead and check a few more things. So to see a little bit more about the PHP syntax, in PHP is also possible to add some comments. So as other code or programming language is also possible to do. So HTML, which is not specifically a programming language, but it's also possible to add comments. Also JavaScript, Java, PHP is also same, okay? And the syntax is basically the same. So for example, in PHP, when we want to add a comment with a single line, we can use this double slash. And when we want to create a comment with multiple lines, we use this slash and the asterisk, okay? But what is a comment? A comment in PHP code is the part of the program which is not executed. So this is ignored by the interpreter. So the purpose of this is for someone else to read this comment and understand what that code does. Okay, so let's suppose you create a complex code that it's difficult to read and to see what is happening in that code, in that algorithm you created. So to help the other people, another developer, to read your code or to understand what is happening in that algorithm, you can use these comments. Okay, of course, it's as much as possible, it's better to write good code and do not add too much comment. But when the code is too complex and you think that it's better to add a comment here for other people, other person to read it better, so you can go and use these options here. Okay, because always remember, developers nowadays, we don't write code. We do not write code to the computer, but we write code to other people read nowadays, because we are creating code to higher level. So the code we write nowadays is most for other developers to read. Okay, so that's why we have this techniques, these features provided by the programming languages to help and to support in the code quality in general, and also in the documentation of the algorithm you create. So let's go and just check this quickly, how this comment works. So I will add it here. So as we see now, I have more lines in my code. So I have 2 comments. But if I run this code again, so if I go to my terminal and I go back and run the hello.php again, the result is the same, you see? Because the comments doesn't change anything in the final result, in the code. Okay, it's just for somebody else to read. So for example, if I want to add a comment here to explain what is happening in this line below, I can add a comment like this. So this line prints the hello in the first PHP script. Okay, so this is just for this kind of thing, for you to say something, to explain something in your code. If I remove this, if I remove the double slash in the beginning, I will have an error. You see, VS Code is already telling me that I have an error. But if I try to run it here, PHP will tell me that I have an error. You see, so a syntax error, because I cannot just type random things in my code. It should be a valid PHP code or a comment. Okay, so this is the comment. So I will, we are starting from the very basics, but I will give some jumps. So we're going to go to soon, we're going to see some conditions, and now we are going to see some variables. So now, if you are not so familiar with this, things can get a little bit more complex, okay? But that's the idea, for you to see what is possible to do with these programming languages. And if you like it, it's a good sign that you need to move forward in these studies, okay? Okay, let's talk a little bit about variables. So let's just check if you are in the chat. If everyone I see in the chat is right in the chat. I see many people from the course to be through. So thanks, guys, for joining as well. So who knows what is a variable? Who have already played around with variable? So let me see if you can have an idea. Do you understand what is a variable? Have you played around with variables before? Yes, no, just give me feedback. For now, I will just try to explain. Okay. Some people is just sending directly message to me. No problem. If you want to send directly to me, feel free. If you don't want to share in the general chat. Okay, you have the option in the bottom of the chat to change if you want to send to everyone or to a specific person. Okay. Okay, a variable. So here in this explanation, is saying me that a variable is a containers for storing information. So in PHP, it has a particularity which that is all variables start with a $sign in the beginning, followed by the name of the variable. And PHP is variable names are case sensitive. I will show you what does it mean. But you can imagine a variable like a box where you store things inside this box and you add a label to know what is inside this box. Okay, so here in this description we have the name containers, but you can also imagine a box and you just put things inside this box. Like in the programming language, we store like values, okay, or information. In this example, in this PHP example we have here, we have three different variables. We have this variable text, as we see here. The variable should start with $sign. So this is part of the PHP syntax. And the name of the variable is, in this case here, txt. Okay. So I'm storing this value. So this is the information. This is the data. A string containing hello world. I'm storing it inside the txt variable. So this is basically a box. Let's suppose a box named txt that I stored inside that the hello world content. Okay, so this is the, let's say, the general idea or very higher level explanation of what is a variable. And always remember, PHP always ends, each instructions ends with a semicolon. In this case, we have three different instructions to the PHP. We have this one, and this one. So we have three variables, three boxes. The first one contains inside it the string, the text, hello world. The other one contains the number. This is an integer. So I will talk a little quickly about types in the next slides. But this other one is a number. So when I explicitly want to say to PHP that I'm creating a number, I don't need to use quotes. You see, in this case, I don't have quotes. I just have the 5. So I don't need, because I'm explicitly saying to PHP that this is a number. And I have a third variable here named y that contains another number that is a float or contains a decimal pointer. That is this 10.5 that is stored inside this y variable. So three variables, three different values. Okay, so this is a variable in PHP. Okay, let me show you what happens if I run this code. So I will copy the code, go to my VS Code. I will create another file, which I will call var.php. And here I will paste. Okay, so the same code with three variables. I opened the PHP tag, as I mentioned. So always open the PHP tag, because after the PHP tag is when we start adding some PHP content. And here I create the first variable, which is stored in this variable. So the equals sign here means that I want to assign this value inside this variable. So this is what means this equals sign in the middle, okay? Also, I have the second value, which is the x variable, which will contain inside it 5, and the y variable, which will contain 10.5. Okay, so what happens if I run this code here? So let me clean my terminal, clear. I will run PHP, so the command. Now I have a different file. So if I type ls to list all the files I have inside these folders, I will see 2 files. So if I go using my interface here, also I see 2 files here. You see? So now I have 2 different. Let's see if I can. Small. Okay, so I have 2 files. Now I want to run this file here, the var.php. So if I want to run this file, I need to type php, the command, and the name of the file, var.php. Okay. So as we see, the file just ran, but I don't have any result. I don't have a result here. You see? Why I don't have result? Because I'm just storing values inside the box. In that box, I'm just storing values inside the variables. Okay. But what if I want to show some of these values in the screen? I can use the command that we learned in the previous file. But now, instead of passing the value itself, like I did before, I can just go, and after the echo, I can put the variable name. Okay, so $txt, for example. So what I'm saying here to PHP, that I want to print what is inside the variable txt. So the $txt, I'm telling to PHP that I want to print what is inside the txt variable. Okay, so the txt box. Okay, so that's what it means here. So let's run it now. Again, so PHP var.php. And there we go. So now I'm printing a variable value, not a value itself. Okay. I can change it. So if I want, for example, to see what is inside X, I can change here from variable txt to X here. Okay. And I can print it again. Okay, so now we have 5 because I'm printing what is inside the variable 5. And as I mentioned, each variable is like a box that I have some I store information inside it. In this case, I have three variables, each one with its own value. And when I call the command echo from PHP, and in front of it, I put a variable, this is going to print what is inside the variable, inside the box. And if I put here y, I'm going to see 10.5. All right. Does it make sense for you? What is your feedback so far? If you can share. Okay, I see some thumbs up. Okay. All right. Let me clean this. And let's move forward. If you have any questions regarding the current content that I'm presenting, the current slide, just send in the chat. I can review something or I can answer. General question, we just let to the end, okay? So we can organize it better. Also, we have the option to concatenate strings. So for example, if I have a variable, so what is the variable? Is that box that we store information inside it. Okay, so if I have that variable, as we have here, we have the txt variable, and I want to print this variable, the content of this variable, but together with something else, I can use this concatenation, string concatenation. Okay, so as with the example we have here, so I have a variable, which is the txt, which contains this value here, Jagaad Academy PHP live lesson. And I have the echo command that I'm saying to PHP, I want to print what I have in front of it. In this case, I have a content itself. And inside this string, I have a variable. You see? So this content here, because I have the $sign, PHP will say, oh, I found a $sign. So here, there is a variable. So I should print what is inside it. I should not print the $. Okay? So this is going to print. This is the, and here instead of $txt, this is going to be Jagaad Xmas PHP live lesson. Okay? So let's run this example. Let me go to my VS Code. I will create another file that I will call string.php. Okay, so now we have 3 files. First, of course, I need to open the PHP tag. Okay, so open the PHP tag, and here we have. So I'm assigning a value, so I can use a comment here, for example, assigning assigning value to the txt variable, and here printing the a text concatenating the variable. I hope I wrote it correctly, and that's it. So here I have the string itself, and here we have the variable. Okay, so PHP will interpret this. So let's see what is going to be the result. So PHP, the name of the file now is string.php. And the result, this is the Jagaad Xmas PHP live lesson. You see? So now I'm concatenating this variable with the string. And it just works in PHP because of the double quotes. Okay. So every time we use double quotes to print something in PHP, or to assign something, or to use strings in general, because this kind of text here, when we are using the double quotes, we are creating a string, what you call a string. PHP is going to try to find if there is a variable inside it. Okay. So this is something you have in PHP that in some other programming languages you don't have. That, for example, if you change this to single quote, so now instead of using double quote, I'm using single quote, PHP is not going to look for a variable inside this content. Okay. So this is not, PHP is not consider this $sign txt as a variable. All right. So for example, if I go to the terminal, I will clean and run the file again, string.php. The result is different, you see? So this is the $txt. So PHP didn't interpret this as a variable because of the single quote. So PHP has these particularities. I want to share this with you because sometimes when you are when you are using PHP, or if you are learning PHP, you can find both. You can find double quotes, you can find single quotes. Okay. So if you don't have a variable inside it, it's better to use a single quote. If you want to print something, a text together with a variable like we have here, you can use $txt. All right. So this is the concatenation. We have other possibilities to concatenate strings in PHP. Let me show you the other one. So the other possibility is to use this dot here. So let me copy this and paste it here. So now, let me go back the other one so we can compare. So where is the other one? Here. So I will put the other one here in the top, and I will just add this as a comment. So this commands here will not will be ignored by the PHP interpreter. Okay, so because I put the comment here. And now I have two other commands. The first one, I'm doing the same as I was doing before. I'm just assigning a variable, a value, in this case a string, inside the variable txt again, with the $sign here. So the $sign txt, the variable. And always don't forget the semicolon. Okay, and in the next line, I'm just telling to PHP that I want to print something. In this case, I want to print. This is the end. Now I'm saying to PHP, please stop the text here, close the text. I will concatenate this to a string. So I can use this dot, you see, to say that I want to concatenate this string, this variable value, so what is inside this variable, with this string here, this text, and also with this text after that. Okay, so we are going to have this is the what is inside this variable here, and the exclamation mark at the end. Okay, so this is another option we have. So let me run it again. So I will clean the terminal, php string.php. And again, the result is the same. This is the Jagaad Xmas PHP live lesson. So this is two possibilities we have to concatenate variables that contains a string inside it with some strings that we want to create. Okay, so this is one possible way. And because here inside this string, I don't have a variable, I can change this one, for example, to single quote. You see? So I can have single quote here. Okay. So that's it about the string. Let's go to the next topic. So far, about the content we have seen. Is it okay? Does it make sense for you? Or is it too, is it a thing from, I don't know, too different for me, strange? Doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't know what I'm doing. So what is the feedback so far, if you have any? While you are thinking, I will continue here. Fine, okay. Anyone else want to share the experience? Clear, easy, hard, medium? All right, so let's talk a little bit about numbers when we have variables that contains some numbers, because we can use these numbers, for example, to calculate, to add some calculation. So I'm going to show this feature for you in PHP, how it works. It's quite simple. I will create another file to do this. So I will create a file called sum.php. In this case, it's a very simple file, which I have created two variables. One with the, I'm assigning the value 5 to the variable x. And I will assign the value 4 to the variable y. Okay, so I'm storing these both informations, each one in each own variable. So 5 into x variable, 4 into y variable. So it's like just trying to imagine, as I mentioned before, two different boxes, one containing the 5 inside it, and the other one containing 4. And what if I want to sum these two different variables, or what is inside these two different boxes? I just need to call by the name of the variables. So what as we call in PHP, the x variable, for example, and the y variable, for example, using some operation, calculation sign, in this case, the plus. So this is basically, I want to print x plus y. So this is what it means. So I'm just printing the result of this sum here. So PHP will first execute this calculation and then later print it. Okay, so let's see if it really works, or if I'm just saying something wrong. Okay, so let's go. So here we have, and as we can see, PHP execute from top to bottom. So when you are reading a PHP code, start from top to bottom. Okay, if you have some error in the middle of the script will stop. If this is a fatal error, when you have a, because in PHP you have different levels of errors. When you have a fatal error, the PHP script is gonna stop. So for example, if I type something wrong here, so this is an invalid command. This is gonna generate an error for me in PHP. So the PHP script is gonna start from here, is gonna assign the because also PHP is an interpreted language. So because we don't have a compiler and so on, PHP just run the file, okay? Just for you to, if you have never heard about compiler and this kind of thing I'm talking now, some programming languages, before run the code, you need to generate an executable file. And this process of writing code and generate an executable file, we call the compilation. So to make this compilation process, we have a compiler. So Java, for example, works in this way. So before you run some Java code, you need to compile it. And in Java, if you have some error, the compiler is going to get this error. So you're not going to be able to run the code. In PHP, because we don't have a compiler like this, we have an interpreter, PHP is going to try to interpret the code. So it will start from top, from bottom, and just when it gets here, it will show me an error and we will stop. So the lines below this one is not going to run. Okay, just for you to see, to try to understand what I'm saying here. So if I run that code, which I know that have an error here in the line 6, I will see the error. Let's see. So I will run the file sum.php. So I have the error, you see? But if I print something here before, hi, for example, let me clean that terminal again. PHP sum.php. Oops. Yeah, in this case, because it's a fatal error, I have a syntax error. PHP is not going to print because it's a syntax error. Okay, but for example, if I try to print something like, let's see, a test like this, that is a variable that does not exist. So I need to put here, I guess. So let's see if I'm doing it correctly. Let's see. Sum.php. Okay, so the hi is here, you see? It's because in the middle. Let me go ahead and try to do what I have done before. Let's see if it works. Because it's a syntax error, sometimes let me call a function that does not exist. So like this. So I'm just trying here in this line to generate an error. Okay, so that's the only thing. So fake error. Okay. So let me run it again. There we go. So we have a fatal error, as we see. But even though we have a fatal error, it's possible to see the hi here. You see? So because PHP is interpreted, the code just ran till this line. And when I had the error, the code above this one was executed. Okay. So the code below this line, the error will not execute. So this is how PHP works because of the error. When you have a compiled language, programming language, you are not gonna manage to run the code like I did here, like I have the high here. Because when you try to compile to generate the executable code, this is gonna fail, okay? But this is how PHP works. All right, so that being said, let's see our calculation. So now you know that PHP runs from top to bottom, and it will just go line by line. And if you have something printing before, this is gonna show for you, even though you have an error in the bottom, okay? It will not stop the script until it gets in the line with the error, okay? So something for you to have in mind. All right, let's see this one. So PHP sum.php, and now we have the result, 9. You see? So as I said, the 5 was just added to 4. So we have the calculation, and then it was printed. Okay, so this is a basic calculation in PHP. We can also we have other operations, but I'm not going to cover all of them. We have multiplication, subtraction, the modulo, and so on. But we need to check the documentation, or if you want to learn the details more, you can also check our courses in the Jagaad Academy, the full course or other course we have available there. Okay, so I'm just go over some of these features. And it's something really cool. So now I'm gonna jump a few steps. So we are gonna go to a few funnier features, but it can get a little bit more complex now because we are just almost at the end of the lesson. So I just want to show what is possible to do, although it's not possible to cover all the details so far. But as I mentioned, if you want to learn the details, you can also check some of our courses, or you can go to the PHP documentation. But I highly recommend you to check our PHP full course. When we do this kind of thing a lot of times, the guys are here in the chat and they can tell you. Okay, so let's see this readline function. That is the function we have in PHP when we are using the command line to get some input from the user. So in this case, when I say user, is the person who is using this terminal. So for example, if I want to ask the user to input something in the command line, I can use this function here, readline. So for example, I can ask the user, what is your name? And the user will input the name. And what the user types in the terminal, and when press enter, the input of the user will go inside this variable here. So the variable that in this case I called just line, okay? The line that was read, okay? So let's run this code and see what happens. So let me go a little bit fast for us to open for some questions. So now I have the read line. What is your name? And here I will just print echo. I have the string, and then I will concatenate the string with the variable, what is inside the variable name. And what is inside the variable name? What the user just inputted. Okay, so let's go to the terminal and run this code here. So if I go to the terminal, write PHP input.php and press enter, let's see what is going to happen. So now the terminal is going to show me what is your name, and we'll wait until we'll type something and press enter. Okay, when I press enter, what I typed here is going to go inside this variable. Okay, so if I type, for example, Lucas and press enter, then we have the result. You see, if I type it again and now press Jagaad, then we have this result here. All right, so this is all this you can ask for the user input, and then you can imagine more things. So learning this kind of thing, how to ask input, you can imagine more applications you can create. So there are PHP applications that people use in the command line. So for example, some script to extract the data from external website and show you in the terminal. Or for example, if you have a spreadsheet that you want to read all the information inside the spreadsheet or the CSV file and generate something else. So you can ask some inputs. So for example, ask some inputs for the user. So what is the format you want as the output? You want a CSV, you want a Excel file, you want to, I don't know, to generate a TXT file. So you can ask inputs to the user, and then at the end, you just execute the operation, okay? And there are applications, real PHP application that runs in the terminal like this, just asking for some inputs and then executing the operation later, okay? So this is just, if you have creativity, this can start, you can start creating a lot of cool things here in the terminal as well. Okay, and for backend developer, this is the playground. Okay, so this is just for you to understand. As you noticed, if you have already used other programming language, sometimes we need to say to the language what is the type of the language of the variable you are creating. In PHP, if you noticed, I don't need to specify the type of the variable, so I just assign, for example, here in the variable example, I just assigned the string to the variable. I just assigned the integer to the variable, and PHP internally will know that this is an integer, this is a float, and so on. This is what we call the loosely typed language, which we don't need to specify what is the type of the variable. For example, there are some programming languages that you need to do this. So this is a string, you need to specify the string. This is an integer, you need to specify an integer. This is a float, you need to specify float. So PHP, you don't need to do it. Although since PHP 7, it's possible to add some type declarations, especially in functions and classes, and just for you to know. So now PHP give you the option if you want to type or not. All right. This is some of the types we have in PHP. So most common, there are a few, there are others we can find in the documentation, but we have a string, integer, float, Boolean, array, and so on. And we can also have some if conditions. So just to go over some if conditions for you to see how we write ifs in PHP. So this is a function in PHP which returns the current hour. And here it's just assign the current hour to this t variable. That means time, let's see. We can give whatever name we want to the variable. In this case, it's just t, okay? And if t time less than 20, then this line here is printed. Okay, so only if this condition here is true. Okay, so let me run this code quickly for us to see the result. So if.php. So if I run now, let's see if I will have something, because my computer is in another time zone. So let's see if this is gonna work. So PHP if.php, that is the new file I created. Yes, so have a good day, because now the time is less than 20. Okay, I can print the time, and as I mentioned, the name of the variable can be anything. So I can change this, for example, to hour, like this. And this specification here, this kind of specification, usually we find in the PHP documentation. And this kind of thing you learn as you have more experience with the language, okay? So as you get more fluent with the programming language. So this is something that you're gonna remember, you're gonna have in your memory as you use more and more the language. Here, as an example, I just put here for you to see. It's also possible to print the hour, so I can print here. And I can use a constant here in PHP, so I'm concatenating with this constant in PHP. That means PHP end of line. So here, I'm just saying that I want to break line after print the hour. So it's just it. Okay, so let me run it just for you to see. So I have 19. So because it's my computer, my PHP is configured to UTC or CET, the time, I don't remember. But here it's a different time of my computer because of the PHP time zone, okay? And because it's 19, it's less than 20, then I see the result here, okay? So this is the simple if condition. We can also create while like this. So the what is that? What is this? So when we want to create loops. So for example, if there is a area of your code that you need to repeat too many times, but you don't want to do that, you can use loops. So there are many ways to use loops in PHP, also other programming languages. There is the while, the for each, and so on. I have here an example using while. So what does it mean? Let me just try to explain here quickly what is happening in this code. So first, I just assign 1 to the variable. So I'm storing 1 inside this box here. I have a while instruction. So this is a PHP command. And inside the parentheses, I have a statement. The code that is inside this bracket, so always we have this kind of statement, we have the bracket. As we have in the if, okay? So as we have here in the if, let me show you. So in the if example, we have the bracket. So if this statement inside the if is true, what is inside this bracket here is going to be executed. If this condition is false, so for example, if the time here was 21, 25, this code here was not executed, is not executed, okay? So this is why we have this brackets to separate the block of a code. In this case of the while, the loop, it means while the statement is x is less than or equals 5, then I execute these 2 instructions here. What the first one means, that I want to print this string. And the second one, this means that I want to increment 1 to x. So the first time the executions get here, 1 will become 2, and so on. So this will iterate until x become 6. Then this statement here will be false because x will be 6, and then the execution will stop. Okay, so this is a simple loop. If I go and create a file called while, and I paste it here, you're going to see what is the result of it. So while.php. And that's it. You see many results here. So I will use the break line like this in the terminal, because that's how we break line in the terminal with the \n. And as we see, we have the $x here. That will be the x variable, okay? So let's run it again. Let me clean the terminal, PHP while.php, and there we go. So we have this string here, this command printed 5 times because it's while this statement here is true. If I change this to 100, let's see what happens if I clean. So PHP while.php, we have this instruction here will run 100 times. So I don't need to repeat this command too many times. All right, so that's how a while loop works. Also covering it very quickly. All right, and just to go and to show you, because I mentioned that PHP is used most for web and so on, but to give you an introduction to PHP, I wanted actually to show PHP. If I went directly to the web server example, we would need to learn HTML and so on. So if you were in the previous lesson in the front end, you probably already saw HTML. But here I will show you just how to easily run a web server in your computer without using the Apache or without starting the Apache in your computer, just using the terminal. Okay, so you can just run this command here, which is the PHP built-in server. So this is inside the PHP command, and is very helpful if you want to develop an application. So this is it was designed for development environment. Okay, so if I copy this command and I paste it here, it will start a server in my computer. So let me run it. So now the terminal is blocked, and I see that the server is running in this part here. So if I get this link, copy, and I go to my browser and I paste it here and run, I see that I have a PHP web server running here. So for example, if I create a file called web.php, and here I add an HTML tag, so for example, h1, and say, it works. And now I go back to the browser and I type here, web.php. Now I see it here. So now I can mix PHP code with HTML, and I can create dynamic pages with PHP and HTML. Let me just show you a quick example. So for example, if I open a PHP tag and close the PHP tag, and I add here, for example, the x variable 1, and while x less than or equals 10, and I will open brackets, and here I will open the PHP tag again, and I will just close brackets, and I will x++. Okay, so here, let me just show you what I'm doing. Probably it's better to... Also, I can use these two dots, and I can use the and while like this. Okay. So let's see if I did it correctly. I have an error here, or is my VS Code? Semicolon. Okay. So what I'm doing here, I started a PHP code. I have 2 blocks of PHP code. So here I'm jumping a little bit, as I mentioned, just for you to see what is possible to do with PHP. But we cover a lot of the details of how these things work in our full course, for example. But this is how people used to create dynamic web applications in the past. And still nowadays, traditional PHP applications, they are in this way. So WordPress, for example, works in this way. So I have the HTML outside the PHP code, you see? But in the PHP code, I'm starting a while and I'm closing a while here. And inside this while, I have this HTML, and I also have the iteration, okay? So this is gonna run from 1 to 10. And when x gets to 10, this will stop. So now let's go to my browser and see what happens. So I have it works 10 times. Okay, so if you already know HTML, you can, or if you already played around with HTML, you can imagine what is possible to do with this. So you have cards, you can create very good dynamic design and websites using it. All right, so I think that's what I wanted to show you. As I mentioned, all the details of these topics, these features of PHP, we also cover in the PHP course. But if you want to also check some documentations, there's the PHP documentation itself. There is this source code here that is, you can check in the slide. The PHP right way. If you search on Google PHP right way, you'll have a very good tutorial how to write PHP in the right way, as the name suggests, and also modern PHP, because when we search by PHP tutorial in the Google, for example, it's very outdated content. So if you want to know modern features, check the PHP the right way website. Okay, and also again our academy courses and the full course if you want actually to focus and be totally committed to learn PHP for 6 months. All right, so that's basically it about this lesson, this open lesson. I hope it was helpful for you. You learned something. And please let me know if you have any questions before we finish. We are already running longer. Vlad, are you around?
Yes, I do have some questions received earlier from our participants. Like one of them, which PHP framework you would recommend? And also synced to this question, what should be considered to choose right PHP framework?
So nowadays, the popular frameworks, they are Laravel, Symfony, and also Lambdas, or you can also check Cage PHP and so on. But the most popular one, where you can move faster, is Laravel. But Symfony is together with Laravel. Laravel contains some Symfony components. So between Laravel and Symfony, my preference is Symfony. And if you are creating a software that require more code quality, you require decoupled components and more, this software will live longer, I recommend Symfony. But if it's something you want to go fast and just release fast, like a prototype and simpler applications, you can use Laravel. But both, they are the most popular ones and the most recommended frameworks nowadays. Okay.
Okay, but what not to start directly to learn Laravel, but why we need to learn PHP?
Okay, yeah. So PHP, Laravel is written in PHP. So if you don't know PHP, it's going to be very painful to learn Laravel because you are going to have PHP errors. You are not going to be, when you have something different in Laravel, it's going to be difficult to debug, to understand what is happening. So it's super recommended to learn PHP first before learn Laravel. Otherwise, you are going to be like, you can be blocked by some Laravel errors or some complexity in the Laravel configurations and so on. So go step by step, learn PHP first, and then go to some framework because it's going to be a lot easier. Okay.
Okay, guys. Also, another questions. I have a question I have received. People are asking if we will share the record and if Lucas will share this kind of presentation in order to take a try on its own. Yes, we will share shortly this recording and also the presentation, and also you can find it later on your Thinkific account. I hope it will be tomorrow. And last one question, Lucas. Is PHP still adopted by the companies for new project nowadays?
Yes, it's still very used by the companies, especially if they are launching some web applications. So it's the way they have to go faster, for example, and also nowadays the option to create good software. So yes, it's one of the first options, especially when we have web application. And if you check that, as I mentioned before, as I showed, we have a lot of job opportunities. PHP job opportunities is because the company is still adopting PHP. And for example, the new chat here that we use, that is Slack, also use PHP in their APIs. Also Vimeo, if you know Vimeo, the platform video. So they are quite, it's not so new, but the Slack, for example, it's quite new and it's developed in PHP. And I see many other companies adopting PHP in new applications as well, especially for APIs and this kind of web applications. Okay.
Okay, I have no questions received.
Any other in the chat? Nobody else? Thank you, Guy, for joining. If there's no question, I think we can finish. Okay, thank you, Vlad. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you learned something. And also, if you are interested to join some of our PHP full course, also you can ping Valentina or the Jagaad Academy contact. Feel free to reach out to us. and ask your questions, and also check some of our free lessons we have on the Academy website. I have published one PHP course there that is about web scraping if you want to watch and see more how we work, how we teach at Jagaad. Okay, and most likely as soon as possible, sooner we are going to be launched, and we are going to have more free lessons and free courses available there. You can also check. But if you want to go for something longer and also actually learn something from scratch, the full course, it's the best one for you. All right. Thank you very much for joining this open lesson, and I hope to see you soon. Have a great holiday, Christmas and New Year. Thank you, guys. Bye.